hold on to your hats. The countdown to the biggest wellness event of the year is on.
Join us on August 15 and 16 in Melbourne for not 1 but 2 days of Powerhouse Wellness, featuring 11 of Australia's most inspiring, entertaining, educating, fermentating speakers.
Damo, what is fermentating?
MP, I'll tell you at the summit.
Your favourite wellness couch speakers are joined by special guest Nat Kringoudis on all things hormones and female health.
Join the Up for a Chat girls, the wellness guys, the natural nutritionist Steph Lowe, Cale Brock, Quirky Cookings, Joe Whitten, Marcus Pearce, and the rest of your favourite wellness couch podcasters.
Regular and VIP tickets are still available, but hurry before this summit is sold out. For tickets, go to www.thewellnesssummit.com. The Wellness Summit is proudly brought to you by Well and You. Be someone that makes you happy.
TheWellnessCouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives.
Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, featuring your hosts Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner.
Hi, welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
I'm Julie Tenner.
And today we are talking about the concept of the red tent, which I'm going to hand over to Julie to kick this one off.
So the red tent, I really wanted to hatch that because I think it's not a concept that's largely known by the vast majority of women, which I feel like it really should be. So the red tent is historically where women would go when they were bleeding, when they were having their time of the month, when they were having their period, and it would be the tent that was specifically and only for women who were bleeding and would sit together. And of course, when you're living in a community or a village with women, often your aunties and your sisters and whoever else, you're all in the same cycle, so you're all bleeding at the same time and then you're all active at the same time.
And this is historically at a time when there was no electricity, so everybody bled according to the moons, the cycles of the moons.
That's exactly right. So you would work, you would be mother, provider, you know, working in the fields or the farm or whatever it was that you were doing during the day, feeding, nourishing, caring, working really, really hard until the point of your bleeding. So for the 3 days that generally, or historically, I know it's very different now, but historically a woman's period would be 3 days of bleeding, they would take themselves all together into the red tent. And the red tent would essentially be sealed, I suppose, in a way that no one who was bleeding was allowed in there. No men were ever allowed in there. And so all of the younger women and the younger children who were not bleeding would be left to pick up the slack and pick up the work. And the women who were bleeding, who had been working really hard every other day of the month, would come and sit together, and that's when they would eat the most beautiful foods that they'd been creating over that month. And they would sit on their pile of straw and they would talk and they would weave and they would giggle and they would tell stories and they would rub oils in each other's hair and oils over their skin. And they would have deeply connecting, nourishing, restful time. And so, of course, you would look forward to your period if it was a time of honouring, wouldn't you?
Yes, you would. And how do we feel about periods today?
I know, and this is what I want to talk about. I feel like it's one of the biggest tragedies that now we go, ugh, I've got my period, and we have so many ways of avoiding it, don't we? It's, you know, I know Rhea talks about the labour bypass era. I really feel like this is also the period or the cycle bypass era. Oh my goodness, can't speak today. Era that if you really don't want to have it, you really don't have to
have it. Yeah.
And I feel so deeply saddened by that because I think there's so much to us as women living in a cycle, that there's periods and emotions and feeling times of the month when you're open and receptive to this and you're feeling that, and then you move into another phase and you're open, receptive and feeling this, and then you move into another phase. And we go through these phases every month that are divine and perfect and match and liberate our world. Not to mention on a more biochemical level allow our bodies to eliminate toxins and residual chemicals that we're keeping. When we're having a full-blown period, we're eliminating toxins that we've been holding in our tissues, we're eliminating hormones that are not needed anymore, and our bodies are essentially shedding their cells and refreshing. So even on a biochemical level, it's really important. On a spiritual level, it's really important that we have a cycle, that we move through periods of being inward and being outward and being, you know, reflective and being expressive. This is all a natural cycle that women, when they're fitting into that, fits succinctly and beautifully, and have reverence and respect for themselves in that.
And what a flip of a concept, you know, really that idea. It just really hit me when you said that they actually get to enjoy the food that they've cooked, you know, in the month prior. You know, they're actually setting up an altar to themselves as women.
Exactly. This is my point.
Yes.
This is my point. And so now we go, when you ask anyone, male or female, about what a period is, it's pretty awful.
Yeah, it's
painful.
It's painful.
And they're crabby and they're nasty and they're bitchy and they're irritable and all of these hugely negative emotions. And I know that Jenny Blythe, who's a midwife down here who specialises in a lot of women's ceremonies, on documentaries and in books that you'll hear her talk about, she has this fantastic concept around nourishing and honouring the woman. So she flips it around and says, yes, at the point of the period, women become very cranky and very irritable. Because why? Because for the rest of the month, they suck it up and they put up with it and they put up with it and they, whatever it is, relationships, work, children, lives, disconnection from themselves, whatever it is that they're not honouring, they put up with, and then they get their period. And on that day, they go, well, that's it. Yesterday it was okay, but today I have my period and today I'm not putting up with it. And the whole point of it is our period, our cycle, our flow is that moment where it makes us go inward and say, I am so much more worthy than putting up with this, and today I will not let myself be made to feel like this, or I will not allow myself to go through this anymore. And we have this flipped version of events that it's just because we've got another thing to deal with, but actually what it is our soul's calling.
And, you know, our bodies are incredibly intuitive, because as our cultural shift has gone from honouring the woman in a period and towards seeing periods as, you know, negative,
But as, you know,
negative thing, as something disgusting, as kind of like just an inconvenience of womanhood. We've also manifested physical illnesses in women and endocrine disorders such as PCOS, endometriosis, which are ultimately at an emotional level a reflection of our disconnection with ourselves as women. So our bodies are incredibly in tune with what's going on with us at an emotional and spiritual level, and we are often creating these physical manifestations of what's going on in our outer world culturally, you know. And I'd love to go back and look at the kind of point at which we've started to see an increase in some of these things, because I really do wonder if there's a correlation, you know, with this idea of no longer nurturing ourselves in that space, you know, seeing ourselves as disconnected from our reproductive system, seeing ourselves as disconnected from our ovaries, our womanhood.
Exactly. And isn't it given also that sense of ick about it, that we don't even kind of want to know about it?
Well, the fact that you see ads and, you know, a young child could be mistaken for thinking that periods are blue. Look at ads on TV.
That's outrageous. Isn't it? Takes a whole nother
you know, if that is not an example of how removed we are from our bodily functions as women, I don't know what is.
No, also, yes, but also for me it really comes back to this sense of honouring ourselves.
Yeah.
Is what is it in your life that you will not put up with when you have your period? Because that is actually the thing that you need to shift for the rest of the month.
Yeah.
Because that's what you're calling. It's the moment in your cycle where your body and your soul makes you go inward and take enough notice of it that it says, change this.
Yeah.
You're not honouring me. Make it better. And if you listen to that in the rest of the month, then you don't have the crabbiness and the nastiness and the bitchiness when you get to the period, because you're not putting up with all this stuff that now you're not, because there's conflict. Because there isn't, if you're honouring and nourishing yourself and putting back in for the rest of the month, or maybe drawing a line in the sand and going, okay, something has to shift here and this is what it is. So if you're feeling cranky and antsy about something when you have your period, I would ask you to reflect what it is that you could shift or change around that in the rest of the month, because I bet you will find a shift and a difference when you come to having your period again. And that might be in PMS that may disappear, that might be in the heaviness or the pain or the whatever it is that you are experiencing in your actual period. Could very well shift when you shift the emotional baggage that's around it.
Yeah. And for anyone who's listening here who doesn't have a period, I'm your voice, because I haven't had one. No, we're all good, but I just want to make it clear that, because I'm thinking, I don't know how I feel then. I don't know whether I'm crabby or not, because I haven't had a period
actually,
in over
totally
2 years.
Talk about this. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, well, so I have PCOS and I had that before I had my son, and I conceived my son through with assistance from traditional Chinese medicine, which has been amazing for me. And I'm absolutely looking at the emotional manifestations of things like PCOS and any other endocrine disorders. And so I listened to this really, really interested because I'm trying to connect back with myself at that time when I was getting a regular cycle, which also wasn't managed by the pill, which it was for a long, long time, which also obviously impacts our hormones and emotions and everything.
Well, it does. I just want to very quickly touch on that in terms of looking at it from a biochemical, again, naturopathic point of view, is that a lot of women, young girls, go on the pill because they're having menstrual problems. And their pill is seen to just take care of it because all of a sudden you've got this really normal 28-day period and you've got a 28-day cycle and a period that... are you all right?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, period that comes and goes in this very, small window. But it's all fake. So all of the underlying hormonal issues that you have actually continue to fester and potentially get deeper in your body or get worse. It's masked by this, what I'm going to term in commas, a fake period. So the pill overrides your normal hormones, which are still functioning underneath, and makes it look like it's normal. So when you go on the sugar pill, it dips just enough that you bleed. But it's not like a cycle, natural, normal hormonal period when your hormones are running and you've got this huge elimination process, I suppose, going on. It's very different.
And it's a good point to make too that, I know that when they designed the pill, they actually designed it originally to not have a period, and then at one point somebody said, oh no, women won't feel comfortable if they don't have a period, so let's put the sugar pill in. So that was actually something that was put in after the pill was designed to give this sense of a real period, which obviously you can skip if you so desire.
Yes, can't you? And isn't that also, I really wanted to touch on that too, this whole concept of back in the red tent, the period was almost looked forward to because it was a time of honouring and nurturing and slowing down and softening and having nourishing moments with yourself.
Introspection.
And now what do we do? Now we can't change our lives and we can't change the external, and we still have to go to work and we still have to run and go to the gym and swim and we still have to do all of this stuff. But do we?
No.
Do we? If we actually flip that around and went for this 3 days, I am doing everything yummy and nourishing and nurturing.
I can just imagine all the women listening going, but I can't, but there's this and there's that. And that's a perfect example of how much we've designed our lives, almost to
become masculine in a way. We've stopped honouring the feminine that exists within us in the cycles. And in that, we stopped honouring the softening that happens in that. So... it just so speaks deeply to me. Anyway, I want to really go back to your journey that you were talking about with your spiritual journey with not having a period.
Yeah, because I think that there's a lot out there around, the period being representative of womanhood and fertility being representative of womanhood and what it means to be a woman. And so I've really had to kind of go inward a lot and understand what, where my feminine energy has gone, because it hasn't disappeared, it's gone somewhere, because ultimately a lot of these kind of disorders are linked to not nurturing the feminine and living too much in our masculine, there's a number of reasons that you'll see cited for the increase in things like PCOS and endometriosis. Exposure to toxic chemicals is one of them, our hurried lifestyles. But a big thing is that we are living in a society that celebrates the masculine, and there are so many women who operate in that energy far more than the feminine. And our bodies respond to that, or not respond, and shut down some functions. And so for me, it's been a really interesting journey to explore that and ask myself what I need to slow down, and not even like physically slow down, but slow down my thoughts, slow down my drive to, be what I might perceive to be enough.
Or just to be and do, which is the masculine, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's going.
The feminine will just be and sit, but the masculine has to do and achieve.
And it's all about doing and achieving. And it's, I guess, going from that, we hear bandied about that idea of the human doing instead of the human being, and because so much of us are really human doings, aren't we?
Yeah.
And so I think that these kinds of things, when you're challenged with infertility or, missing period, they're little insights into what's out of balance in your life. What do you need to come home to in yourself to reconnect, to nurture? Because, ultimately there's a plethora of things that you might be able to do from a biochemistry point of view, from a pharmaceutical point of view, to make your body do what you want. But your body is so intelligent for helping you to come back into balance and telling you what's going on with you at a spiritual, emotional, mental, soul level. And I think that there's beautiful gifts in that if we can allow ourselves to sit with it. You know, some days I'm totally fine with it and I'm like, today's one of them. Other days I kind of, you know, go into the bit of resentment about why is this happening. But, you know, I'm almost grateful in some ways that I have this, you know, opportunity to really get really congruent with myself and what I need to be who I am, you know, and not need to necessarily be more than that, just be who I am, which is a harrowing concept, I think, for many people who feel the pressure to be and do and have more than they are, which is ultimately the human condition. You know, it takes such courage to really grow up and become who you are, because we are conditioned so much and told that we need to be X, Y, and Z, when in fact we are perfect how we are, and it's about standing true in that.
So beautiful. And I feel like that touches so deeply on self-worth as well, that we are feel so defined by what we do, or the label that we have, or that we put on ourselves, or that's put on us, whatever it is, that we're not defined by who we are very often. It's so true. So I really wanted to hash out nourishing, so what that means, honouring ourselves, what that means in our month to make our cycle easier. Or even in your case, it's all the same thing, isn't it? It's reconnecting back with our femininity and our inner cycles, and allowing that and finding the space for listening to the imbalances which produce the clues to what it is we're missing, isn't it, the rest of the month? Or however long it's been. They provide those flags or signposts, I suppose, on that road to fulfillment, that we can actually get to a point where we really enjoy our period or our cycle.
And for women who don't have a period, I think a lot of it's asking yourself, how am I in my body today? Because often you can not even feel in your body. You can feel so rushed and kind of in that masculine energy that you don't even feel like you're actually in your body. Like, I've been to kinesiology sessions where, you know, she said, you're over here. Like, I'm kind of so far removed from my body in the room. And we know this as women. You know, this happens. This is, you know, we're moving in a world that is asking so much of us to be always doing. And so a really great way that I find is to really sort of slow down, you know, and stand and be with my body and appreciate my body at a physical level, and also feeling into it, you know, feeling aches and pains, asking what are they there to tell me, you know, listening to myself when I actually need to go to sleep as opposed to staying up later and working or whatever it is. That really giving yourself that space and attention to connect back in with your physical body is really powerful.
Yeah, I feel like that's going to be another podcast, because that can be really hard for women, particularly post-babies, to get back in love with their bodies, or possibly they've never loved them before. So. And
that's an important one to unpack too, in terms of our attitude to birth, because for so many women, you know, the medicalised route of birth is convenient because we don't have to necessarily connect into our body and our power. We can outsource that. So we're also going to unpack that.
We can bypass that.
We can bypass it, and I think bypassing that is an extension of this, bypassing what our bodies are here to tell us.
Bypassing our cycles, bypassing our rites of passage, if you will, because that's honouring what we are as women, isn't it? And even that very first period, like, I know I really want to do this for my daughters as well, is Jenny Blythe runs coming of age menarche ceremonies, so for honouring transitions. So I know that there's also equally as honouring for men's circles. There are some facilitators now that do coming of age boys and fathers weekends.
I'm actually going and interviewing Dr. Arne Rubenstein actually on his
so awesome.
The Making of Man. It's really powerful.
Yes, isn't it? That's a beautiful book. So there's honouring for men coming of age. I really feel coming of age, actually, this reaching of teenagehood, rather than this huge, they just become disgusting and I don't want to know them 5 years thing, can be really flipped on its head to really honouring the journey and the passage that they're going through. And very much for women, so for our daughters, how much do we want them to connect with their femininity and honour themselves and their bodies and their cycles, and potentially whatever happens at this point at the start of their menarche can even define how they are in their 20s and 30s, how easily they can conceive, how easily they can give birth, because it's the messages we give them about the beauty of their bodies and their cycles that can so much define
and it
their
can
journey
also,
as a woman.
And you know, even, you know, it can really be a beautiful way to begin those teenage years, which are so often characterised by peer pressure and of doing what other people expect of you. You know, if we can give girls permission to connect in with their body and really sit in their own power,
yes,
then what a gift is that?
Oh, so true. Connect with their intuition, and in that moment, sit in themselves and make the decision based on their own authentic.
Yes. Not what they feel like, you know, some boy might be wanting them to do, you know, or their friends might be thinking that they should be doing. I think it's really a beautiful way to allow young girls to really sit in who they are, because they're about to enter a time in their life which they're going to really perhaps struggle with that.
Yes, and need it more than ever, that female intuition, which is so connected with being in your body and being connected and in rhythm with your cycles and your movements and your feelings, and honouring those cycles, movements and feelings on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour, month-to-month thing, without holding the guilt and the putting me on the last list, isn't it? Recognising that it's so important for me to do that stuff because it actually flourishes out in the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Not to mention, makes my period easier. I actually love having my period, and I am probably the only woman I've ever heard say that in general circles. I love it because I feel I've got to a point in time where I can really honour myself enough the rest of the month that I then honour myself in my period, and the big stuff doesn't come up, and I don't have hugely painful or dysfunctional periods at all. They're pretty much bang on where they should be. And if I'm having like a really rough period, I'll sit there and go, you know what, today I actually just need to sit down.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm going to do all day. It doesn't matter about the house and the washing.
Yeah.
I'll ask for help with my baby. My husband might finish work early so he can come home and cook dinner. Whatever it is, I've figured out that if I really allow myself the space to listen to myself.
And it's having the courage to
act on it.
That's it. Having the courage to act, because I think we fear so much that if we don't do it, then the whole world will end, you know.
Yes, or we're self-indulgent, or we're not deserving of that, which is huge,
We'll
isn't
be
it?
unpacking that in a whole episode.
Won't
I think
we?
That needs a big topic,
It really does, and the belief systems that come with that. And then I also find that my physical body feels so much lighter and healthier at the other side of my period, because it is just a physical elimination process. It's like a monthly detoxification of my body without me needing to put it on a formal structured detoxification process. It does it itself if I allow my guidance system to tailor nourishing foods to what it is that I'm looking for, and nourishing activities for what it is that my soul's looking for. If I can balance that, it's actually a kind of blissful experience. And when my period's not enjoyable, then it's a red flag for me to go, what's out of balance here? Is it my life? Is it my not listening to myself enough? What is it that I need to create shifts for in my world so that I feel more whole and nourished as a woman?
Wow.
I know.
I've just been thinking, like, you know, there's so much in that for women, you know, to really almost, it's like a toolkit, isn't it? It's just sort of kind of, what do I need to do in my month?
It's a map every month, every day of going, hello, this needs attention.
Yeah.
Hello, not getting any love over here.
And it doesn't need to be, I mean, obviously, you know, you're running a household of 3 children, you know, busy, but it doesn't need to be whole chunks of hours of time. It can be small little rituals.
It can be small things. And even so much as the food that I choose to put into my mouth. You know, there has to be
loving yourself enough.
Loving myself enough to want and enjoy and love the food that I'm eating. Because when I really create nourishing food for myself during the day, I feel amazing.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Isn't it? I feel like that's a whole podcast on itself too. Anyway, so nourishing myself with food and nourishing myself with self-care that I feel that I need. So sometimes that is time out, and sometimes that's a bath, and sometimes that's going to bed early. And sometimes it is also, even though I don't want to get up and go and exercise, sometimes it's honouring myself enough to say, you need to put this into your body so that you feel great on the other side.
And it's flipping that concept of, you know, depriving yourself of certain foods to loving yourself enough to give yourself certain foods.
I hate diets. They're constantly taking away, isn't it?
Yes.
It's constantly this feeling of deprivation, which I feel like women get a lot in motherhood as well, this constant reinforcement of deprivation rather than flipping it and honouring yourself enough to put in. So instead of taking out those foods, put in the foods that are amazing, because you'll actually find you'll naturally start to just want those more, and you'll feel so amazing afterwards. You won't be as hungry to want the other stuff.
So I think this is a really good place to stop and have a think about if you actually do have biochemical female repro problems going on. Where do you go from there? Now, I suppose in terms of my background and a naturopath, we would go down the point of herbs and diet changes to manipulate your hormones ultimately, which does work but takes a really long time. It is a 6 to 9 month investment, and potentially there's blood tests and all sorts of other stuff going on to get a hormone profile picture. My spiritual side of me says you would, on top of that, be looking for things to create movement and blood flow and circulation to that area of the body. So I feel like this is when energetic medicine would come in. So for me, it's things like doing belly dancing, where you're really looking at moving the hips and the muscles of the uterus and massaging those female areas, and getting back in connection with the inner feminine through that body movement as well, I think is hugely powerful. Then I would look at also things like acupuncture. You know, if your basic westernized naturopathy isn't working, it could be that you need more of an energetic shift, and acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine really does actually balance that out and offer something different. And I think that can work incredibly well for a lot of people, particularly women.
And that's certainly been my experience. I mean, I've been having acupuncture for on and off about 6 years, and I certainly attribute that a lot to helping me conceive Hugo. That was really what I needed to help create those shifts to allow that into my life, and it is enormously powerful. Other things like kinesiology is a great one, and
so kinesiology is really tapping into the physical body about the emotions that are trapped there that can be creating physical manifestational problems. And
I mean, and in terms of the other things you can do, things like yoga, which are that self-inquiry, and also the twisting that gives you around around that area to help kind of stimulate blood flow to the ovaries and the reproductive organs.
Totally.
It's been a really big part of my journey as well.
And where I really wanted to head off, so there's all that stuff, and I'm sure that there's more that you know about. What I really want to try and fit in this podcast was a concept that Bridget brought to me when we were having a discussion a few weeks ago, and I had that one of those aha moments when, yes, that's it. And I would really love you to share with our listeners that moment of insight that you offered to me about what a snapshot of biochemistry is and how you can change that through psychological dynamics, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think that's what I really landed with, because I did journey the naturopathy kind of paradigm last year when I was investigating where things were at with my hormones, and I kind of, it was really great and insightful, but I also thought, well, we're working with a snapshot at a moment in time of how my hormones were behaving from a blood test or a urine sample or whatever it was. And then I thought, and I think I asked you, but aren't we creating our hormones in every moment, you know, through our brain and bodily functions? So to be building a whole profile and a protocol for months at a time based on that single snapshot, it just, a penny dropped with me, and I just thought, is this what I'm feeling? Is this sort of what what I'm wanting to do? And that really kind of prompted in me a desire to look more within. Okay, well, what can I do from a belief point of view, or from an underlying exploring my emotions point of view to help shift that stuff myself? Really kind of taking that point of view around, I know Dr. Bruce Lipton explores this idea, the biology of belief, and that our perception, you change your perceptions and you change the chemical balance in your body, is really ultimately what he's getting to. And it's amazing when you see that and feel that. And I've been doing quite a bit of work on that side of things, which can be a challenging concept for people. I think that idea that we are creating our reality, which is ultimately what it's getting us to see.
Yes. And just that, you phrased it to me in a particular way that it was, oh golly, I can't even remember now. It was something about the concept of you're changing your hormones in every minute, given what you're putting in and what you're putting out, and the belief systems that go along with that, and that you have the power to change, therefore, your hormone and your biology profile at any minute of any day, at any point in time.
And so it totally flips on its head that concept of infertility, which might get thrown around, that word, you know, they get that label that can be so devastating for women. Or
any female rep. Like, I'm even thinking for me as a naturopath, how did I not know this over the last 10 years? Just that concept of we so use tests and profiles and what the results we get from that, as does most Western medicine. The results dictate how we treat that person long term.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it is just a snapshot of one moment in one time that could be shifted, potentially, through a shift in perception and belief systems that shifts things on a hormonal, physical level that therefore make it irrelevant.
Which is, I guess, a challenging concept as a naturopath to think of, because it can undermine.
It was massive. It was one of those moments I went, oh my God.
But I mean, it's a challenging concept because it can undermine so much of the way you might practice, you know, because, and you know, and totally, of course, you know, if you don't have much else to go on, then that's a, you know, really reliable, I guess, approach. But I guess it's only half the picture if we're not looking at everything else.
It's still very biochemical, isn't it? I mean, it doesn't incorporate the spiritual, real holistic version of who that person is. We're just looking at a biology snapshot.
It's reducing things down to its component parts as opposed to that whole view.
Exactly.
Which I think with women particularly, like, and this is not from my clinical training by any stretch, but we are so complex, you know, and our fertility is so tied up in so much more than just the biochemical, you know, like it's our belief systems, it's the archetypes that we've grown up with, it's what our society tells us it is, it's, you know, the dynamic within the family that we have or want, you know, like there's so much influencing.
Not even to say the woman you are and how you fit in your physical body and how you feel
and
about
what
yourself.
Kind of connection, if you have a connection with your physical body, because there's so many women who really sort of don't, you know, with especially if you've grown up in a conventional medicine approach to health, which is, you know, like you trot off to the doctor if you're not feeling well and you might be given a course of antibiotics and you don't question it and that's what you do and you treat that part of yourself as opposed to seeing that disease as a messenger, you know, and something to be welcomed and worked through as opposed to something to numb and make quickly go away. Yes. Because they're two very different ways to look at health.
I so hope that this maybe has provided you with some insight into honouring yourself, meeting your needs, maybe saying no or maybe saying yes with joy, depending on where it is that you're sitting within yourself, and maybe just sitting for a moment or a while if it feels comfortable with your inner feminine. Maybe get crazy and do some belly dancing.
I love that.
Even just dancing in the lounge room, something that connects your soul and your body and makes your hips move is going to be great.
Or even find a song that you loved as a teenager, or, you know, something that takes you back to a moment of real freedom and spontaneity. I think it's a beautiful thing to do.
It is. So wishing you a beautiful week ahead.
Yes.
Bye.
See you next time. Bye.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/The Wellness Couch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.